Welcome to Forbes Newsroom. Joining me now is Nassau County Legislator Josh Lafazan. Josh, thank you so much for joining me.
Brittany, thanks for having me on the show.
Of course, Congressman George Santos, as you know, is resisting mounting calls, including your own, to resign after admitting falsifying most of his resume and facing local, state, federal, and international investigations. You've been one of his most vocal critics in Long Island, and just last week, you launched the Where's George campaign. Tell us about that.
Sure. So, as a sitting legislator representing tens of thousands of people in the 3rd Congressional District, my constituents are outraged, and I am outraged that we have an absentee member of Congress. George Santos refuses to answer questions from the media. He refuses to speak to his own constituents. And quite frankly, if George Santos won't come to the voters, then the voters will come to George Santos. So we started the Where's George campaign as a fun but serious way of saying that our member of Congress is missing in action. And if you see him, upload that picture with the hashtag Where's George. We will hold him accountable every single day in this job.
Has there actually been a George Santos sighting since you launched it?
Sure. So there were a couple of sightings. There was one, with him on the plane coming home from Washington. But what we're saying is that you don't get to lie to the voters and then have 2 years of a cakewalk, right? George Santos thinks this story will die down. He thinks he can simply ignore the pressure. And we're here to say that every single day in this district, we are going to raise hell. It'll be a living nightmare for you, George, in this district. You do not get to hide from the people who sent you to Washington. You should resign. And if you're not going to resign, then we're going to hold you accountable locally.
Later, I listened to one of your press conferences last week, and you just said it again. Something that stuck out to me was you said you're going to make his life a living nightmare. What does that look like?
Sure. So George Santos, and I'm speaking directly to you, George, when we see you in the supermarket, in the bagel store, at a restaurant, in one of our communities, we are going to hold you accountable. We're going to ask you to answer for your false claims, ask you to answer as to why you won't resign. Again, George Santos thinks that this story will simply die down and that the voters and our outrage will subside. I'm here to remind you, Brittany, and you, George, if you're watching, that is not the case. George Santos doesn't live in this district. In fact, nobody knows where he lives. But let me remind him that Long Islanders, we don't give up that easily. And so we're going to continue to organize, continue to stand in solidarity, to continue to speak emphatically and unapologetically in that we refuse to accept that our member of Congress is a liar and a fraud.
And what does holding him accountable look like? There have been bipartisan calls for him to resign. Is resigning enough?
Sure. So it is not enough. It is the first step. But if George Santos is not indicted and not held accountable by the legal system, then what it says to the voters and to the general public is that some people are above the law. We have a system where the entire foundation of our democratic system is faith in democracy and faith in institutions. And part of that faith is that if somebody breaks the law, they will be held accountable, regardless of whether they're an average American citizen or a member of Congress. So he should be indicted. The campaign finance violations that are alleged are flagrant and offensive, not just the lying about his resume, but potentially, funneling money, the $700,000 that he loaned his campaign. He reported making $55,000 in 2020. These are flagrant violations of a campaign finance system put in place to undergird the integrity of our democratic system. He should resign, but he should be indicted as well.